Hi, friends. For reading class, we are going to move on to the next story. It's called The Nightingale. So I'm going to turn on the CD and you can follow along with the pictures and listen to the story.
Once upon a time, 1,000 years ago, a grand emperor lived in China. The emperor was the most powerful man in China. All the people did exactly what the emperor told them to do. His palace was filled from top to bottom with treasures. You can't imagine how beautiful and rich it was. The floors were made of solid gold. The curtains were made of heavy velvet. The pillows were made of cloud soft silk. Even the doorknobs were made of precious jewels. Naturally, the outside of the palace was as beautiful as the inside. A sample of every kind of flower, bush, and tree in the world grew in the emperor's garden. The flowers were all sweet smelling. The trees gave just the right amount of cool shade. The garden was so big that no one had ever seen all of it. It stretched from the steps of the palace to the grassy meadows, to the forest, to the sea. And there by the sea lived a nightingale. The nightingale was just a small gray bird, but she sang so sweetly in the moonlight that everyone who heard her said, "The nightingale is the loveliest of all the emperor's treasures." When the emperor heard about the nightingale, he commanded his noblemen to find her. He wanted the nightingale to sing at the palace that very night. The entire palace went into a tizzy. None of the noble people in the emperor's court knew exactly where to find the nightingale. Everyone hurried around the palace. They bumped into each other in the garden while they searched for the little bird. Finally, a young girl who worked in the palace kitchen said she would lead the nobleman to the nightingale. The young girl led the noble people through the garden, to the meadow, through the forest, to the sea. When she pointed to the little gray nightingale who was sitting quietly in a tree, everyone was disappointed. What a dull, ordinary looking bird, they all said. But then the nightingale began to sing, and when they heard the nightingale's lovely song, the noble people were enchanted. They felt as though they'd like to spend the rest of their lives listening to the nightingale. Finally, one of them said, "Oh, Nightingale, you truly are the loveliest of all the emperor's treasures. Won't you come to the palace and sing for the emperor?" "My song sounds best here by the sea," said the nightingale, "but I will be glad to visit the emperor. It will be an honor to sing for him." And so the nightingale went to the palace. That night, the nightingale sang for the emperor. Her song was unbelievably sweet. It sounded like the wind in the trees, like gentle laughter and the softest lullaby, all mixed together. The emperor had never heard anything so beautiful. He was so pleased he wanted to give the nightingale great gifts and treasures. But the nightingale just said, "To please the emperor is the greatest gift I could wish for." Then she sang again, even more beautifully than the first time. The emperor could think of nothing more wonderful than listening to the nightingale every day. and nothing more terrible than losing her. So the emperor had a round, golden cage built for the nightingale. The nightingale was kept in the cage almost all the time. She was only allowed to fly in the garden once in the morning and once at night. 12 servants holding onto silken threads tied to her legs followed her everywhere. She was not allowed to fly to the sea, where she loved to sing in the moonlight. Her song still sounded beautiful, but at times it also sounded sad. Then one day, someone sent a gift for the emperor. It was another nightingale, but this new nightingale was not a real bird. It was made of metal and beautiful, precious jewels. When it was wound up with its golden key, it sang a pretty song over and over again. All the noble people were very pleased with the new jeweled nightingale. They said, "Ooh," and "Ah," when they saw the jeweled bird. They clapped and sighed when it sang. "The jeweled nightingale is a magnificent creature," they said. "That other nightingale always was too plain and ordinary to belong to the emperor." In all the excitement, no one noticed when the real nightingale quietly flew out the window and back to her home by the sea. The real nightingale was hardly missed. Everyone decided they really liked the jeweled nightingale better. It certainly was prettier, and it always sang the same song so they could sing along. The emperor listened to the jeweled nightingale every morning, noon, and evening. He was quite enchanted with it. But one horrible day, the jeweled bird stopped singing. It was broken. The emperor called his best doctors, jewelry repairers, and magicians. They all fussed and fumed, but they could not fix the jeweled nightingale. The jeweled nightingale would never sing again. Oh, how the emperor missed the nightingale's song. He missed it so much that he grew sad and weak. After a while, he was so ill that everyone thought he would die. He stayed alone in his room, staring at the broken jeweled nightingale, getting weaker and weaker. "Sing to me," he begged the jeweled bird. But the jeweled bird could not sing. But then, one beautiful evening, a lovely thing happened. Through the window came the sweet song of the real nightingale. She had heard that the emperor was ill and had come to sing for him again. When the emperor heard her song, he opened his eyes and smiled. The more the nightingale sang, the better the emperor felt. "Oh, nightingale," he said, "how can I ever thank you? I will throw away this jeweled bird. You will be my only nightingale. Promise me you will never leave again." "Do not destroy the jeweled bird," said the real nightingale. "It did the best it could. Keep it with you, for I cannot stay with you. You must let me come and go as I like, but I promise I will visit you each evening. I will sit outside your window and sing to you. I ask nothing in return but my freedom." "Then you shall be free," said the emperor. From that day on, the nightingale sang for the emperor every evening, and they both lived happily ever after.
So, friends, we just heard the story of the Nightingale. Now, let's move on to some of our assignments that are in our packet. So I need you to find this page in your packet. It's blue, and we're just going to talk about it. So it goes along with our story, The Nightingale. Now we're going to practice making an X. It's just good writing skills to practice this. So you're going to need a blue crayon, a red crayon, and a yellow crayon. So in the squares where there's a blue star, you need to trace all these X's with a blue crayon. The ones with a red star, trace with a red crayon. And the ones with a yellow star, trace with a yellow crayon. And then on this side, you are going to use those skills you just did with Xing, and you are going to X out one item in each row that doesn't belong. So in the first row, there's a nightingale, and then there's a stork, and then a dog. A nightingale, which is a bird, a stork, which is a bird, and then a dog. Which one doesn't belong? Yeah, the dog doesn't belong. So you would put an X over the dog. And the next one, there's a purple flower, an orange flower with leaves, and then a boat. So which one of those doesn't belong? And then down here, there's the little girl who helped them find the nightingale, a cage, and then the emperor. So then you have to figure out what one of those three doesn't belong either. Thank you for joining me. I will see you later this week.